The topic today I want to discuss is why people with autoimmune and chronic pain need to be taught a little bit differently than the general public. While I explain this to you, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of the fascia releasing that I would recommend people learn for themselves, whether it's in person, virtual, through the courses that I have, and then some of the movement strategies that I use with machines that people should be aware of, because there's going to be many layers of depth. So started off personal training, got into Pilates, gyrotonic, and now I'm taking off through the fascia field because I am one of you. Autoimmune, pain, didn't necessarily have a diagnosable answer from a doctor. Maybe it was just in my head, maybe I needed surgery, and I didn't totally love that answer, and I had a feeling the body could heal more on its own. And if you have an injury, maybe you do, it's always good to go get checked, know what you're working with. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a mind reader. You're going to need definitive results and an answer. What I hope to do is educate people enough and make the fascia pliable enough in order to them not lead to a tear, an overuse, and an injury, essentially. Sometimes a tear might need surgery. A tear, it might be too far beyond my scope of practice and fascia's potential, but everybody's different. Some people are really determined, and even when I keep saying go to a doctor, they don't. All I can do is suggest and say, this is what is repeatable, this is what's common, that is an outlier, that does not make any sense, you might want to go get that checked. So, we stand on our feet. Everything comes from the ground up. Not only do our bones respond, our muscles respond, and our fascia. Fascia has been the underdog up until this point. They just used to kind of scrap it and cut it and never thought anything. Fascia is what the brain communicates with the body. Maybe even that's where pain is. So muscle memory might actually be fascia memory. Fascia could be seen through cellulite, actually, because cellulite could be trapped fascia. Is it more liquidy? Is it a little bit more gooey, like honey? Is it a little bit more like a gummy bear? There's bands of fascia, which is more like a muscle, and there's something more like cotton candy web-like of fascia. So if you do repetitive movements, you could start to bind things up together, kind of like a dreadlock. And so the hair might not be damaged in a dreadlock, it just is tangled. And so there's hope with fascia that just because it's bound up collagen, you could be doing the right fascia release in an adhesion on your own to release it. So up to this point, you could use balls and blocks, and on my YouTube there's a short thing of all these different things that you could use, and ultimately I found the wood. I had a wood maker even make this shape out of the wood. There's different shapes doing it depending on your levels, because you really just want to take tension out of your body. Meditation really tries to create that space so then when you're in a heightened emotional space, you have that place of familiarity. Similar to what I do in my studio is create a safe spot for the body, so if there's injury, we can check in within these safe spaces of alignment and movement to see if the injury exists there. Sometimes when the injury is, just happened, rest is the best thing. But a lot of times alignment is going to be the best, especially people with back pain. A lot of times it's the legs are overactive. They need to be released. All the fascia, the adhesions need to be released, and the right muscle recruitments need to start happening more. Also, people don't appreciate their feet enough, and so you really need to be working on your feet. It's not until someone has plantar fascia, hammer toes, bunions, that then they might start to get an interest in the feet, and it doesn't even have to take that long to do any of that. So, when we work out in the gym, when we work out with just free weights or resistance bands, there is only so many directions you can go. You are lifting up to gravity and you are coming down. that is going to make you work certain muscles. The traps, which is what feeds the shoulders to the neck, goes into the neck. So if you don't have good alignment, that is going to be not a good idea because you're reinforcing an already probably strong pattern. If you don't address your breathing, taking 3-dimensional breath, you're probably going to go up and breathe into these already tight muscles. So if you go working out and breathing, we have to teach you how to breathe better. If you're someone who has pain, you probably hold your breath. When you hold your breath, what then is the energy that you start to fuel your workout with? Is it cortisol? Is it adrenaline? Then if you happen to be this little category of your mast cell activation, that deals with histamine. So you might have a reaction to it. So someone with strong scents, perfumes, chemicals, laundry detergents might not make you feel well, and that could be in heightening your histamine response. Food sensitivities could be heightening your histamine response. There's also environmental things that could be doing the same thing. Overexercising could be putting your body into an overload, which then is going to make you get into your adrenal or your cortisol, which is going to engage that mast cell activation. So you just need to be aware of, sometimes it's fine, and then you're just in an overload because you're stressed, you haven't slept, it's too hot, it's too cold, you took too hot of a shower for too long, or you went swimming and it's a warm area, or the sauna kind of makes you sick. That this whole time I've been working with this more sensitive base of people, and the mast cell was kind of that missing piece that helps us explain that we're almost over heightened and we know it, but we've never had the right education in order to explain it. Then people go and tell you, just you're overthinking it. No, I think sometimes, like an ADHD person, we just have too much going on in our mind. We're feeling a lot, especially if we have hypermobility. We can't hold ourselves together, or we're holding ourselves together with the wrong muscles, and the muscles that are holding you together don't have as long as an endurance rate. They get fatigued, it starts to cause pain, having pain all the time. Let's see how someone else who's judging us, lives in pain, just us being happy, getting out of bed, and then people are like, you're not like happy or cheerful, whatever, and you're like, I'm out of bed today. That's a goal for me today. It's just very different that not everyone totally appreciates or understands unless you're in it. So if you're someone with something like a back injury, first of all, you probably don't use your butt enough. So sitting on the block here and holding it and sinking it's going to go real deep past the muscles, in towards the labrum, in towards the cartilage. Hold and breathe into it. So when we start to get into an adhesion and it's a tight area, do we hold our breath? Do we breathe? So this moving meditation is, we should be very present with what we're doing, the quality of our breath, if we're breathing enough. And it's just going to offer a lot of insights into our patterns when something more just mental happens, like a high stress mentally, emotionally. So if you have back pain, you probably have nerve pain. Nerves are what give you pain most of the time, or it could be fascia, or unless it's like a tear, like an injury. There's a couple different categories in there. So you go to a doctor, you get diagnosed. They might only have so many tools in their toolbox, and they might say you could do a cortisone shot, we could do a nerve ablation, we could do a different kind of surgery, we could do a fusion. If that sits well with you, great. Some people it does not sit well with. What we could do is try to take the pressure off of the nerve by looking at how the muscles lead up to that area that's on the nerve. So the legs are a huge trigger for the back. The legs connect to the pelvis connects to the back. If your legs are stronger to your pelvis than your pelvis to your back is, then it's probably going to pull off. And you know what's going to go to is the SI joint. What goes through the SI joint is the sciatic nerve. Where are you going to feel the sciatic nerve? In the lower back, down the butt, down the back of the leg, down the calves. I'm not really sure where you're going to be feeling it, but what is causing it could be muscles and the fascia being tight. So the more time we spend working on our fascia, releasing adhesions, feeling the tightness, breathing into it, you're gonna start to feel things being stiffer, more stuck, the different layers and levels of fascia. So if you have cellulite, there's different kinds of cellulite. Some of it will look more like hail. Some of it might look more like a gummy bear, and it's really just it really just tells me what layer your fascia is stuck in, and the quality of what is more superficial in your fascia. How do you address it? It's all the same of just releasing the fascia. So if you have an overactive muscle, you're going to do the same thing if you have an underactive muscle. You also having a dull body area is cause of concern. Sometimes when the body is just, think of it like a trauma survivor. Sometimes if you just were in pain and there was dysfunction, some people get really angry and cause an overreaction, a lot of pain, referring pain, sharp shooting pain, and some people just become quiet. The body has the same way of communicating, and so we learn to decipher what the body is communicating to know what is going to be needed. You're going to have a general protocol that you can follow as far as fascia releasing, and every day, or depending each week how much time you can spend. You might have to spend more time at the beginning, and then as it starts to unwind and you get to different layers and levels, you might have good weeks and bad weeks and of your follow through on doing this. When people have pain, they typically have really good follow through, and as things start to release, the pain isn't there anymore, and you get rewarded of not needing to be so diligent about it. Then you take time off, and then all of a sudden you start to feel dullness in your hands, shooting pains here, and it's just your body's way of communicating that it just needs some time in order to fix itself. So when the general public maybe goes to hard workouts, yoga, eating whatever they want and how much they want of inflammatory foods, they might not have a reaction physically, but internally they might be having more than they are aware of because their body's not communicating. Either they could be in their head more. Some people who are just overthinkers and in professions that think too much, they're really not in their body, and they tend to trip and fall more. They tend to have less feeling and emotion, and that makes them perfect for the work that they're doing. But it might make them less in their body. And so sometimes, enough falls might make someone seek out an alternative treatment or even something like Pilates in order just to be safe, in order to rebalance the body differently. But even Pilates doesn't have its long-term benefits that starts to create too much tension, and the only way to really do that is to release it with fascia. So working the body a little differently is going to be very important. The muscles you tend to work in the gym tend to be the big moving muscles. That's going to pull your joints out of alignment because that's just how they physiologically are. They connect, this muscle, the bicep connects, around the elbow here to here, to the shoulder, maybe up a little bit more. So the least path of resistance is going to jam that in just a little bit. You could go to a massage therapist. You might need it more than how much you're willing to pay. I like doing this self-releasing stuff. Some people like blocks. Some people find the blocks way too hard and need to do balls. But you need to know what you're doing before you go just digging in, because sometimes people just go to the wrong areas. Like, you should never do your neck and your lower back unless you know what you're doing. Don't just go blame what the issue is. I mean, there's always this sibling or a situation where someone's been poking someone, poking something, poking something, poking someone, and then finally the other sibling or the other person has had enough and they lash out. And we see the kid lashing out, but there's been someone interrogating it for a really long, instigating it for a really long time. This person shouldn't be getting in trouble necessarily. I mean, you know, there's the right ways to handle it, but so we shouldn't just go to the pain and blame the nerve, because you could cause permanent nerve damage that may or may not ever recover. So if we go and blame the muscles, if the tendons have an issue, if the ligaments have an issue, let's go after the muscles, because the muscles should have a length contraction relationship. But if there's adhesions in the fascia, you're only going to be able to go so far. There's only going to be so much communication within the body. Then we need to make sure that we work the right way. There should be an order of sequence in how you're working your muscles. Sometimes if things are too hard, your body just goes with what's the strongest. So by using the correct amount of support, you're going to be allowed to feel the right muscles to get worked. You also want to make sure you're not just working in the right alignment. You want to make sure you're working the right muscles, because I actually see people doing the correct exercise the wrong way. Those are the people in physical therapy. Physical therapy doesn't care if you're doing things the right way. Physical therapy just wants that checklist to say, we did this, we did this, we did this, we covered our butt, you could go on your way, you should be fine now. We need some measurable results. A lot of times, that's the right answer for some people. Then there's just not the right answer for some people. Well, why am I still hurting? Well, you shouldn't be hurting, and therefore we can't help you anymore. This is why professions like mine are starting to come up, is because some of us keep seeking answers out when we haven't had the answer. Then there's the other example of hypermobile people. We don't know what we should or should not do. We just know what we could do, what we can do. And just because we should doesn't mean, just because we can doesn't mean we should. But as you get older, your flexibility starts to turn to tightness and the bracing. And then we kind of forget that we were hypermobile, but there's still hypermobility in the area, or now the bracing is starting to take over. Then sometimes we think that the biggest range of motion is going to be the best. We hear a lot about yoga. The problem with something like yoga to not your average person is that if you're really good at yoga, you probably have a hypermobility issue. Stretching like that doesn't necessarily get a fluid response of fascia, especially if you had adhesions and the pathways don't have that way to flow. So you might actually just be pulling your ligaments and tendons, and so you might one day hear a pop, and it might not be anything that stops you in your tracks then, but down the line there starts to be this repetitive injury cycle that something happened, there's an adhesion, now your muscle's trying to figure out another strategy of not using what just happened anymore, and so it's going to start using a different muscle. Or maybe your shoulder gets injured, and so you start to hold your arm more, but then when you walk, you need to swing this hip a little bit more. So what was a shoulder injury starts to become a hip injury, or a knee, or a foot. And it can follow patterns in very funny ways. It's not always just one joint to the next. Your shoulder injury could cause your left foot injury. So by addressing some of these things sooner when you have an injury is going to be better. But it's never too late, and I've never seen an age of someone who can't recover from a fascial adhesion. So going to a massage therapist is going to be helpful. What we could also do is add superficial work with balls and yoga blocks and towels. But then we can start to follow fascia lines and actually get deeper than the superficial muscle lines that we know to work with. And we can really start to release the lateral line, the spiral line, because those are going to be what stabilizes your body differently. And When we're passive, releasing adhesions, it's going to be very different than when we're active, because sometimes injuries happen when you're active. Sometimes I feel like that can be missed in massage because there's only so much time. Maybe they want to do a whole massage to you because you only can afford to come in, every 6 weeks or 2 months, or life happens and you can't get in, that they only do the best they can superficially, and you might need more time in an adhesion to melt it. You might need to do it on your own. And what you're going to need to do is educate yourself, and then once you know what you're doing, you start to do it, and then when you're ready for the next layer, you peel away the next layer, you release adhesions in the next layer, you start to do corrective alignment in the next layers, you start to do strengthening of the correct muscles. You could use machines like this. There's also resistance bands that you can attach to a doorway, but if you don't have that correct pulling alignment, I feel like it's going to be hard. Most people's butt and back need to be stronger. I don't love doing this rows if you have a back injury. You're probably just not set the right way. You're probably pulling the wrong way. You're probably not going to breathe the right way. But if I can sit, be more comfortable, maybe I need a ball in between my knees and I can do something more pulling back of rows, that's going to be a little different than me being down here doing the rows. Also, squats just aren't the best for your back. It is just, I could do a plie. Do you load your quads or your butt when you're doing a plie? I want you in the butt. It's really hard to do it ideally if you're injured. Then you have the athletic way to do a squat coming up and down. But what's your back doing throughout the whole range of motion? Then, if you can lift your body weight, you actually might want more weight than what your body can do. So then how are you going to load it on? With a barbell on your shoulders? Well, that's going to change your center of gravity, put more pressure on your lower back. Or you hold dumbbells. Dumbbells are maybe going to pull on your traps and make that strengthen, and then also change your center of gravity from your shoulders and your hips and putting more pressure on your back. It's just upping the stakes of the likelihood of you using the correct muscles incorrectly. And do we need that much pressure on our back when we already have a back injury? The answer might be yes. I don't know, because everyone is really different. Then we need to be more aware of our spiral line, because how we're walking, how our feet is planting when we walk, how much should our feet be pronating and supinating? What is pronation and supination? Is it the heel? Is it the ball of the foot? So you might pronate your foot this way, but someone else might pronate their foot this way. And what is going to wreak havoc onto your body? So by having the right machines to balance you out, to give you the feedback that you need, might help correct the alignment in order for you just to start working a little bit more ideal. If you're someone who does golfing or someone who does a lot of walking and your back hurts, where are your hips in relation to everything else? How much does your feet rotate? Then how much does your shin rotate? How much is your thigh rotating? How well are your hips staying still? Then how well are you twisting from your rib cage, and how much are you moving from your arms? So am I working from the inside and having the strength and the movement come from here, and then having a reaction on the outside? So when I'm doing spirals, when I'm coming up here, I'm working through my core in a very different line, the spiral line. So I'm squatting, I'm sinking, I'm using my butts, I'm twisting, and then I'm using my abdominals to come pull me up. Or this would be me moving from the outside in. There's no change through my spine, and I'm just powering through my arms. Most of the time, when I give people something in their hands or on their feet, that's where they push from. Then if it's on your feet, they tend to work from their calves and their feet and not their butt. And what I want them to do is keep working from the core. Your butt's part of the core. If it's arms, I want to be working from the back if I'm doing things pulling down. So a nice fluid movement from my spine with spine control. And then I can start to add more complicated spine shapes. But what I want it to look like is a nice fluid, even pull back and a come forward. So the right weight matters. Versus this really jerky, like bam, bam, bam. That's gonna create rigidity. Rigidity is tension. And so just the quality of what you're doing drastically changes it. I mean, apply it to music, apply it to dancers. When you see a really rigid dancer, when you hear a rigid musician, there's just something off about it. When someone's moving rigid and comes in and closes the door rigid and puts their bag down rigid, they kind of come off as angry. So just, what is your relationship to movement and how fast is it, how sharp is it? So if I were to do the same exercise, pulling more through my armpits, and then there's a softness through my arms. You know, it's not saying I want the arm to bend more because then I'm putting more work in possibly the triceps than I mean. So there's the right fixed arm, whether that's not hyperextended or just soft enough, in order for me to then have the correct dance with weight. It's a relationship of movement quality, not just another checklist of something to get done. So you could lift weights to get stronger, and there is that right amount of, you don't want to fall and you want strength, which is really important. And if you were to get injured and take yourself out for a couple weeks, you need the strength to recover. So there's the right amount of strength there, but what if we were to work our feet more? Have our feet be thought of as triangular. The heels are down, the balls of the feet are spread. We have a wide base of support versus these crunched up hammer toes with a bunion and not many things in contact with the floor. Then when your feet have good balance and your hips are on top of them, your butt might be more likely to work better there. Versus just worrying about the weight on the leg press and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it and being rigid, creating tension. We might actually be working the muscles the wrong way. We might be stopping our breath from the full potential. And so to the average person, this might not matter, but to the more sensitive person, this stuff matters, because we don't want just another hard workout because we always feel sore or we have felt sore for a very long time. There's more ways out there to move. There's more things out there to do than just give up. If you're having an awful day, maybe you're just going to be doing fascia release. After some fascia release, maybe you have the energy to do a little bit of a exercise routine. Maybe not today. Maybe it's just bridges today. Maybe it's just squats against the wall today. Maybe it's just then getting to the store and carrying your groceries in for today. But it's these little bits of hope and these little steps up towards recovery and strength and improvement that's ultimately going to allow us to take control of what we're doing and to have hope in what we're going to do and have something to look forward to, because then it's just education. The more you educate yourself, the better you're going to do. If you understand the hows and the whys and the science part of it, you're going to have a better follow through. It's just not about coming in, showing up, doing your checklist and leaving for everyone. Some people it might be, but for those who have more complicated history, there's a lot of hope out there, but you have to find these people, which is why I'm in the process of creating these courses. I can meet with people virtually. I have my in-person practice, but I'm really hoping to help more people, even if it's just a free conversation to direct people somewhere. There's free YouTube things, because I just think that not everyone has money when they're down and out. If they can get better, that's almost just thankless. I wish I had me when I was down and out, but you need to find the right people in order to support yourself to grow. And we're gonna have a big awakening up. So when you're in the right spot, things come together so beautifully that sometimes when you meditate or you're running or you're painting or you're creating or you're playing a sport or a music instrument, and all of a sudden, clear as day, an answer comes to you Something is so clear. You might have thought about it, you maybe didn't think about it. It's just an answer. It's a time. It's the moment you decide you're not going to be in that toxic relationship anymore. That's where you want to get with the fascia releasing, with the exercising. You calm your system. You get slowly into more of that theta, gamma brain waves where everything else out gets calm. You're aware. You can start to create that space of softness. Then you start to speak more to who you are, your soul. Some people say it even connects to that higher being of whatever it is, fill in the blank. But if you get rid of the tension and you no longer have that noise, imagine what you can do. And it is possible to do. It's not going to be anything super expensive, or it's just a time investment that you need to decide if you want to do it on your own. But there's definitely hope on the things that you can do on your own. That information highway that is talked about in meditation could be created even through movement. And I try to tell people all the time who have a hobby that you probably get into that when you're there. So we're just trying to bridge and connect more to life. I mean, they have grounding mats, but what if we were just more connected to the ground because of our feet are more connected, and we have more organic movement happening naturally through space? Now imagine if you feel good and you enter a space and you feel good and you allow more things. So the person who cuts you off doesn't tick you off as much because they must need that time more than you do, because that 3 second is better than a car accident, isn't worth getting so worked up and tight and tense and anxious about. The person that just gets angry and irrational, in front of you, that's fine. You can let it go. I'm not saying that you're not going to have those moments anymore, but it's just more of a connection to choice of peace in your body, or whatever word you want to put it in there. So as I'm doing this, if I were to have my feet hip distance and I were to twist, how much am I shifting my weights and what am I doing in my feet? So I build up here, I load myself this way. Now I'm going to start to add spirals and different loading through a range of emotion to then offer insight into my patterns of the weight distribution through my feet, through my knees, my hips, my ribs. If you're someone who does golf and sports, this stuff really matters to you. If you're someone who just feels their foot constantly rolling out, and maybe that's your knee pattern, that when people have knee problems, they have a lot of tightness in their legs that they just need to address the adhesions on their own. And then these movement patterns of all different combinations can really offer some insight into the bigger picture of everything. Not saying you need to then go buy this machine and the machine's the end all be all. It just challenges the brain more and educates you, so that way you can go better onto your place of recovery more. So that's my TED Talk for today. If you have any questions, let me know. Keep an eye out on Unwinding Studio on YouTube, Facebook. I just started my business page. This stuff honestly causes a lot of anxiety through me, and I'm doing it all on my own for now. So I am in and out of it depending on how I feel, because I want to help people, but not at the expense of my happiness. But I really just feel like we have this huge awakening coming, and I want to help people know that those with autoimmune and injury have hope too, that we have a group, we have a lot of people who are like-minded with us. We just have to find each other, and sometimes it's going to be virtual that we're going to find each other, and sometimes it's going to be location that we might be able to find each other. But the broken bodies are very welcome to my studio, into my world, into phone conversations for free. If anyone wants to work together, network together, any of that kind of stuff, I'm always open to it. Let me know. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.